Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. I'm Sarah Rosette.
And I'm Jamie Albright. And this week on the show we have
Fiona Marin.
Yes, we do.
This is part of the new author series that we do occasionally. And we talked to her about changing genres. And it was very interesting.
It was.
She was traditionally published writing middle grade books, and she's moved into indie contemporary romance. We talked about how she's grown her readership, the things she's learned about craft and revision. And I thought one thing was particularly interesting was adapting her writing routines, fit life stages.
Yeah, and how she made some decisions about even within the genre. Fiona and I had done a consultation together before she was on the podcast.
Yeah, so that's coming up. And this episode is sponsored by Ingram Spark, our corporate sponsor. And we'll talk about that more in a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's see, we don't have any new supporters this week, but thanks to everybody who's been supporting and we appreciate it.
Yep.
So what have you had going on?
I'm just writing. Y'all thought I was depressing when I wasn't writing. I'm way more depressed now that I'm writing. Oh, gosh.
It's all relative, right?
It's all relative.
Whatever we're doing. We could be doing more writing, some writing, any writing. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I've been writing, just revising this book. I'm really having to tear it apart and move chapters around. And in fact, this morning, I took a chapter that was like 6 or 7 chapters from where I was in the book and moved it up to earlier in the book. And I'm not even sure that's the right move yet, but I'm still, even though I'm revising, I'm still figuring out what this story is and telling myself the story in a lot of ways and figuring out.
Well, this is a whole new type of genre. Like with your first rom-com, you had to figure a lot out. And so now you're going through that again.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to a book right now called We All Want Impossible Things. And it's about 2 best friends and one is dying. She's actively dying. And first of all, I may be a martyr. I may just be. I was getting my nails done yesterday and my mom called about, my aunt had asked her something about when Joni was sick and found out she only had a little bit of time to live. And my mom does not remember a whole lot from really any of that. She just has blocked it out. And so she called me while I was getting my nails done. I was listening to this book. She called. I'm talking to her because she's just, can you remember? And so we walked through some things. And then when I got off the phone with her, the lady that was doing my nails asked me about it. And then she said her dad had just died like last month. And so we were talking about that. And the next thing I know, like we stopped talking about it. And the next thing I know, tears are just streaming down my face. Like I am sitting in the nail chair, tears streaming down my face. They had to get a tissue for me. I'm wiping my eyes. Then I took a deep breath and the tissue was over my mouth and I sucked it into my mouth. It was just a whole thing. So I'm good. I'm fine. I'm fine. It's all fine. Everything's fine. So,
those emotions, sometimes they just come over you and you can't, it's like your defenses aren't up maybe, and you just are swept away by them. I totally get that.
So it's a combination of writing this book, listening to this other book, which is so different from mine, completely different, but I do love, it's nice. It's good to hear, like in this book, the focus is on this friendship. Yes. And of course we have the dying friend, but it's really, I think it seems to be about the friend that's living, that this is the focus in her journey. And it's very well written, very well written. So anyway, that's me. I'm good. What's been going on with you?
Let's see. This week, I've mentally switched gears back to the trope book. So that's what I'm working on this week.
Okay.
And having a great time doing that. It's super immersive, I guess you'd say, like just thinking about tropes and how they're used and trying to think about them in a variety of different contexts. Can I think of a book or a movie and a TV show that all illustrate this so that people will have examples or different variations of the same trope? Can I think of different ways it's done? So thinking about things like that, I may be texting you, I need examples of this because I can't think of anything. Sometimes I'll look at a trope and I think my mind just goes blank.
Yeah.
And I know I've watched and read tons of mysteries and thrillers, and I just can't think of it. Been working on that. And the Cleopatra book is up on pre-order, the regular edition. So now my task is to explain to people the difference, like what they can get from me if they order it online, because I've explained it, I've talked about it, and I'm getting emails already. So
you need just an automated email that goes out.
Yes. I just need to type it up once, save it.
Triggered by certain keywords.
Yeah, that would be nice. So I'm working on that and getting up to speed on the Anthropic court case. And we haven't really talked about it because you guys know this is not the place to come for breaking AI news because we don't cover stuff like that. But
breaking news of any kind, really.
Of any kind, really, yeah. Except personal news. Yeah. But I feel like it's reached a point where we should talk about it a little bit. They supposedly had come to a settlement, and there's some numbers that are being tossed around, $3,000 per book. I don't think any of that has been finalized.
No. And September 25th, the judge is supposed to come back. My understanding, and we've talked about
this. Is not legal advice. No, we don't go anywhere near that.
I can barely spell legal, but we've talked about it in the clubhouse room, and there's some people in there that really, they
know what they're
worked in the legal field. Yeah, they're smarter than me. But the judge has been unhappy with the vagueness of the wording about who gets what, because there is, if you do, right now it's only copyrighted books that have their copyright, that you filed your copyright, U.S. copyright. But legally, if you've written the book, you own the copyright.
So you own the copyright, but the question for this is going to be, how are they going to sort out who's going to get this? And they put out some parameters, like it has to have an ISBN, it has to have been published in this window.
It's even saying the ASIN number.
But all that's still up in the air. None of that's been finalized. No. I'm going to link to Writer Beware, the website of Victoria Strauss, that she keeps an eye on this, and she has a really good summary. And she's just putting updates at the bottom as things happen. And so as we're recording this, the most recent update was on 9/8, and it says the judge in the case just rejected the settlement, and links to that. So a news article, so you can go read it. But bottom line is, if you're involved in this in any way, just keep up with it, because it's obviously changing quickly all the time.
And at the risk of going on the spit, you can tell ChatGPT to send you alerts. And so what it will do is it will keep track of it and then send you an email alert. It just did it for me today about updates, so you don't miss anything. Here's two things. One, that there's an article that talks about the judge rejecting it, and it sounds like he is anti-author, but he's not. His concern is that authors whose works were pirated are not going to get paid because they maybe don't fall into this really narrow parameter. And then two, it's $1.85 billion. It is a huge amount of money, but in the world of AI, that's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
And so the concern is, because it is such a relatively small number for the AI community and Anthropic, that there's no deterrent for anyone else who wants to come along and do the same thing. And I think the judge is concerned about that too.
Yeah. So I think that it's worth keeping up with. Yeah. I think it's not worth, don't plan on this money coming in. The issue right now, today, as we're talking, is that the judge said this definition of the class is too broad. He wanted the parties to design a claim form that requires anyone with a copyright ownership to opt in. And so they need the list of people with the titles and the ISBNs so that they know exactly what they're dealing with. Because he's right. It's a big pot of money, and it would be easy to make certain parts of it go to things that maybe it wasn't intended. So I think that's part of it. But there's bigger ramifications to all this. And I will link to an article by Mark Williams on the new publishing standard. If you're interested, it talks about how this may not be great ruling down the road for authors. So we don't want to get into all that, because that's way in the weeds. Yeah. But just in case you're interested, there will be some links in the show notes that you can go to.
And just quickly, also, the attorneys are going to take their money first. Just saying. So don't be putting a down payment on anything big prior to this money.
Don't plan on this.
Yeah, exactly.
Because as with most class action suits, it's probably not going to be
unfortunately
as big as you would imagine, or you might think it would be. And it's another reason that you might want to think about registering your copyright, because when you write something, you own the copyright to it. You don't have to do anything official to have the copyright, but if you register it, then you can use that in cases like this to say, look, this is my book. Here's the proof that I have registered this copyright. So anyway, worth keeping an eye on it. And we'll see how it plays out. That's about all we can do right now.
That's it.
So we have a sponsor this episode, Ingram Spark. They are fantastic and can help your books get into libraries and bookstores and just increase your distribution. Even if you're with Kindle Unlimited,
Yes,
you can use Ingram for your print books to get them places that are a little bit harder to reach.
they are fantastic and they are very author centric. So, yeah, we really appreciate their sponsorship.
Our sponsor this week is Ingram Spark. You have a story, share it with the world. Ingram Spark offers everything you need to publish, promote, sell, and print your book. Reach millions of readers worldwide with powerful tools created for independent authors. Get started for free at ingramspark.com/learn more. Today, we are really excited to talk to Fiona Marin. Hi, Fiona. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to talk to y'all.
We are very excited you're here. We're going to let Sarah read your bio and then we'll get started.
Fiona writes contemporary romantic comedies. She loves finding humor and heart in seemingly ordinary moments. When she's not reading or writing, Fiona can be found drinking iced coffees that are mostly sugar and milk, which that sounds fantastic.
Exactly. So we wanted to have you on today because you are a newer indie author, but
That's
you
right.
have published traditionally prior to this, correct?
Using a different name.
Using a different name. So we just wanted to talk about those things and how the transition is and what you've learned and all those things. So tell us, how did you get started in writing?
Like a lot of writers, I started with reading a lot and talking a lot. And when I think having those skills and being a voracious reader, you have that thought in the back of your mind that you're a strong writer, even if you haven't necessarily tried writing a book. But what actually got me started writing a book for the first time was having a story in my head that I kept wanting to revisit or tell myself, and I just needed to get the timeline down, or I wanted to know what was going to happen next. So I wrote everything down, and that's really how I got started. And that's how I still write now, is as coming from a reader's perspective of wanting to know what's going to happen and having a concept and maybe a first page in mind, and then going from there and trying to figure out what comes next.
Yeah.
So you don't have the whole outline or the whole
No,
story?
I don't.
Okay.
So I started in middle grade.
Oh.
I was pretty young when I started writing, and so I wasn't too far removed from being a young adult in middle grade audience. And so I started writing middle grade, and I think my first book, I started getting into traditional publishing and that sort of thing. And I made a lot of my writing friends in the middle grade space and especially in the communities of writers of color, and trying to diversify the bookshelves. And that was really my passion with that. And so after being published in middle grade, that was hitting a wall there. I ended up realizing how much I was reading of romance and how that was really after the pandemic and then different things happening in my life. I was just reading romance. And so I decided to try romance, and that's how I ended up doing self-publishing, was through the romance angle. Since in middle grade, I know there are self-published authors, but traditional publishing is more of a streamlined route where romance is maybe lends itself more to self-publishing that I've seen.
Yeah, with middle grade, you have quite a few more hurdles to get through, whereas romance, at least you're just selling to the reader. With middle grade, you're trying to sell to the gatekeeping.
The middle grader doesn't have a credit card.
And I know that's
most of them don't anyway.
And the school and library market is so big for middle grade, which is why right now is a tough time for middle grade with book bans.
Yeah, a little more challenging. Yeah.
It's harder on the category, unfortunately.
Yeah. What do you wish you had known about writing a craft?
I would have loved to have been better at revising from the beginning. I don't know how I could have magically been better at it though, but I could gift myself a tool.
But it would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Would have loved to be great at revising. And then, just something that I've learned more over the years of how to make it work best for me, making it work for my schedule, for my ADHD, for different stages of life. Like right, what I do is, and I've done this for a while, depending on which book, is I'll get down the first chunk on the notes app of my phone. And so that way I don't have to start with a blank page. I can just copy and paste everything from the notes app. And so I'm not starting with a big blank page. I have at least 8 pages, like when I'm ready to officially start.
That is reassuring to have some text. Do you just type it into your phone or do you use dictation and speak it?
I've just been typing it into my phone. I've tried dictation once or twice. I know y'all have had people on who talk about dictation. I haven't explored any of the apps or anything, but when I tried it on the Notes app, it went all over the place. And then also, I wonder how the people who do dictation, how they make the right words come out the first time and not have to go back and try again, because I think that also stumped me like the couple of times I tried it. But yeah, I just type it on my phone, which you can do with one hand. So like when I had a newborn just sleeping on my chest the whole time, I'd just be able to do that with my thumb and do that.
Yeah, that's dedication
That's
right there.
amazing. Yeah, I know. I couldn't even get dressed when I had a newborn, let alone type anything with my thumb. What do you think the big difference is, besides the obvious, the big difference between writing middle grade and writing contemporary romance is? How do you have to switch your thinking? Because writing is writing, but on the other hand, it's not. I'm done.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of similarities for sure. The thing that I was so excited about when I went into romance, I was like, yay, I get to curse now. This is so exciting. But I've actually, with my more recent series, actually toned down on the cursing because it's more closed door. So I decided to do a find and replace with some of the curse words to keep it more in line with the tone. But structurally, I think a lot of the thing with rom-com, you have a lot of good banter and turn of phrase, and sometimes you have the really long-winded sentences. I know that with my middle grade book, I had to email my narrator when she sent me a sample of what she was doing. I emailed her. So those run-on sentences are actually on purpose.
Yeah.
The rambles, but that's also something in romance as well. So I think it does really lend itself, like one lends itself to the other, especially being a romance reader. And I think a lot of the books that I was reading as a middle grader were that fun, poppy, contemporary books that person grows up and becomes a romance reader. I think that there are a lot of similarities between the two. Obviously, you have a different audience. And then I know y'all talk a lot about like what success looks like. And I was thinking about some of my goals with middle grade was wanting to provide good representation in like diversifying the bookshelves and being a kid's favorite book. And obviously I can still write from my experiences in romance, of course, but the meaning behind it is different because the audience is different. And what you were saying about gatekeepers in romance, there are no gatekeepers really. So that's not something that you need to be concerned about. You're writing directly to your target audience versus having to rope in the librarian and the parent and the teacher and why this is worthwhile to get to the kid.
Right. And in my experience, having a baby either sucks all the humor out of you or it makes you incredibly funny. I think you've hit it at the right time, probably.
I was exclusively pumping, so there's a lot of time just had to do something on my phone or on my computer. It's just like watching this. I was watching the UK version of The Circle sometimes when I was, and so that kind of gave me the idea to write. Oh, maybe I need to write a novella that's in like a reality TV show. See what that would be like.
That's right. What about marketing? What do you wish you'd known, or what do you think you still need to know about marketing?
Yeah, I think for marketing, especially with going into self-publishing, I'm still wanting to learn everything. Now that I have my third book out, I feel like that was the litmus test or that's the magic number. I feel like when it comes to marketing that I had heard so many times of like really start ramping up the marketing after you have 3 books out.
Yeah.
Would you still say that's still the advice?
Probably. I always say I'm doing a launch thing tomorrow, so this is a good question, a launch workshop. But I think that you should put some effort behind your launch. I just think you should, whatever that is. I'm not even saying financial like with ads, but if you get a little momentum, then continuing that momentum is always great. But you don't have to. You can do the 3-book thing, especially if it's that's a complete series, then you can market a complete series, and that always seems to go over very well. So I think just with my experience, I had success with that first book because I put a little bit of money behind it. Things were different back then, though. It's worked a little better and with a little bit of money. And because of that, it gave me momentum I tried to keep that momentum going. So that's my long answer to a short question. Yeah.
What are you glad that you know now?
I am glad that I have tried to start doing romance and going into that world and seeing how that works for me.
Yeah.
I think something that I was pretty adept at in the beginning was figuring out the new types of social media every time they came out. Like I said, I got started young, so it was also the types of social media that I was gravitating towards anyway as they came out. Whereas now I feel a little bit more burned out on them or not wanting to do it as much. Or even like when I got TikTok, I was like, the amount of time that I would spend watching TikTok to get the hang of it would not be worth it because I'd just be watching too many TikTok. But I think also something that I've paid attention to is what readers like about my books. So a lot from my first series that a lot of people were gravitating towards was the meddling family trope and the text messages, like group texts. And so when I switched to this new series, I really went in hard on the group texts, and it's very much like a mixed media. There's a podcast and a group text, and the reality show is talking, and you're all over the place with that. And so I leaned in more to that because I knew that's more what readers were responding to more than anything specific about the heat level or anything like that. I would say that I also ended up getting a lot of readers the ones who were writing to me at least were telling me, oh, I am reading your books because I'm a teacher and this is what's happening like with my school. It's just nice hearing people giving feedback about how their school year is going, which I don't know if I was expecting just because I know for me, whatever I'm working in, I can't consume media about that. I get way too nitpicky about it, or I had to wait to watch Abbott Elementary until I had left the school system. And I am not now I work in the ER and I can't watch The Pit or anything like that. I'd have to wait until I switched somewhere else. But yeah, I think that I've noticed this new release being in August, and I was like, oh, maybe that wasn't the right thing because a lot of my existing readers are very busy with the beginning of the school year. And so I haven't really heard from them. I'm assuming because of that. So I don't know if I would do anything differently about that, though. I think I would probably keep it the same, but it's worth knowing.
Yeah, going forward, you might do something different next time.
Yeah.
But those same people might need an escape. They may be like, yeah, I need to get away, enter this fictional world for a little bit, even though they're busy.
And the way I've set it up is so that my sales are always sometime during Hispanic Heritage Month, and then of one sale during Hispanic Heritage Month, and then one sale during Teacher Appreciation Week. And so during Teacher Appreciation Week, I can send the email to my newsletter subscribers who, like I said, I think a fair percentage of them are teachers, and say, I hope you guys are having a good Teacher Appreciation Week, say my thanks, and then also remind them about the books.
Yeah, that's so smart because that's just built-in marketing opportunities right there.
What do you still need to figure out?
I think I'm still very much trying to figure out self-publishing and the entire indie publishing.
The entirety of self-publishing.
Yeah.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, even getting I have a really deep and robust group of middle grade friends and Kidlit and in Phoenix, Kidlit, like that whole community I feel very connected to that community. I went to an event at my library for authors this year, and so I was able to meet some romance authors that way. But definitely trying more to connect to romance authors, but it was easier maybe when I was like younger and more online, making online friends all the time and being able to connect to people so fast. But yeah, just everything there is to know about indie publishing. I'm still trying to figure it out for sure.
Yeah.
Trying to get readers and all of that.
That's totally what everyone does. You dive in and figure out one piece at a time, pretty much.
On the job training. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the most unhelpful advice you've received? It could be for trad or indie publishing.
Well, I think certainly the most unhelpful piece of advice I can think of is you should write Flowers for Algernon.
Someone told you that?
I've been told that before. A lot of like when I say,
That's so specific.
a lot of like when you say, oh, I write kids books, so people will respond with their favorite kids book. You should write this one. You should write Charlotte's Web or whatever. And then the other one for more traditional publishing, I would say, was getting the advice about deducting the agent's fee from your taxes. I didn't know that, and so I had to go back and fix my taxes. I think the advice I was given was like, oh, get an accountant, but not the specific advice. The easy advice to say is, oh, you need to deduct that fee. The accountants don't necessarily, if they're not.
Yeah, I found that they thought I was an odd duck. A lot of accountants don't deal with authors that often. So sometimes they don't know how to deal with the different details.
I would also say like the don't quit your day job advice. I think any advice is oversimplified and doesn't really contain nuance if it's like a really short sentence, of course. Obviously, people quit their day job all the time, even if they don't have writing as a backup. And I know that's not what that advice means, but I think that there's maybe some more nuance required to that advice, because I do feel when I was part of the Great Resignation, but I had the backup of having the money from publishing and being able to do that. But I think I should have probably quit sooner. I was like an essential worker during COVID and got very burnt out. Would have quit sooner and worked more on writing, but it worked out how it worked out. But I think that advice sometimes gets a little oversimplified. It's not going to give you insurance. You need to think these things through. You're not going to be able to use this as your day job forever, potentially, but it can be a buffer if you need to quit your day job for a couple of months before you find the next thing. I think that it can give you a little bit of a cushion.
Yeah, very true.
You mentioned your newsletter. So how did you get like your first 10 to 15 email subscribers? How have you grown your email list?
So the first 10 to 15, I think, was a handful of people I knew. And then with my first book, I used Book Sirens to do the arcs. And then I think with subsequent books, I just did a Google form, and I didn't use Book Sirens. I only used that for the first book. So I got a chunk of newsletter subscribers that way. And then after I had a couple books out and then started doing ads, then I was able to do the freebie and get them through BookFunnel. So that's primarily how I've done it. I got a few emails at the in-person event I went to, but generally it's been through BookFunnel.
Yeah, that's the standard advice, but obviously it works. You just have to get out there and do it, and you do it and wait. Sometimes it doesn't take effect immediately.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. How did you find your editor and your cover artist?
For my editor, I used different editors for different books, but I went through Romance Facebook group and I was looking at the different editors that present themselves on the group, and I went that way. And then for cover artist, I went to Etsy, and the artist I used there was Booked Forever. And I used her for the first 2 books of my series. And so the first one she had was like a pre-made cover. And then the second one, I asked her, can you make one that looks like that, but for the next book? Yeah. And so I was able to do it that way.
I never even thought of going to Etsy for a cover. That's amazing.
It is smart, isn't it?
Yes. That's so smart. Also, you might get something really unique because you're not going to the same spaces that everybody else is going to. That's really smart.
And I think at the time her prices were not up to market rates, where now she's charging a reasonable rate. But I think before it was a very good deal. So I was able to get in there and get some really nice, really wonderful, like custom art that she did. So it's really great.
Amazing.
Shortcut.
What's the hardest transition, do you think, going from traditional to indie published?
I think having to make all of the decisions on your own. I think There's no one who can give you a thumbs up and say, okay, it's time, or this is correct, or this is incorrect. Like ultimately, you're the one who has to pull the trigger. But I also think that's what people like about self-publishing. I think that traditional publishing can be difficult in a lot of ways. I know that people find it difficult to get agents and then editors, and then getting the publishing house to market you and work with you. And then when you're in self-publishing, of course, you're all of those people. Even if you hire someone to help you with the cover or the editing or anything like that, it's still you're the boss, you're the publishing house. So I think that's been the biggest transition. I also really appreciate, as someone who writes on the shorter side, word counts have always been like my nemesis. Having to get a good word count, and which is funny because now in middle grade they're saying, can we go shorter? Can we go shorter? Now that I'm not in middle grade anymore. So I have so much stuff that I tried to sell you.
That would have been perfect, huh?
Yeah. And maybe I'll go back. Like I said before, revision's pretty difficult for me. So the thought of taking stuff out of my like shelved books and going through and revising them is harrowing. I cannot imagine doing it right now. And I really want to try with the romance novels and try to make it work and give it a good solid try before going back. And then maybe by the time I go back, it'll be time for middle grade again. And hopefully, knock on wood, with all these book bans and everything, maybe we'll be in a good place for children's literature in the future. But I think that getting to choose my word count and just as long as it's a solid book, I don't think no one's complaining. And in fact, sometimes people want books of all sizes. So it's in all lengths. So being able to do that and just make the book the size, that length that I need it to be has been very freeing, because I don't want to add words just for the sake of it. If you can tell a story in however long it needs to be told, it's nice that I can just put it out. And that means that you get less page reads per book in KDP, but you make that decision and it's fine.
There's nothing more painful than trying to lengthen a book. It's just painful.
The worst. I think that's why revisions are hard for me, because I write, my first drafts are always shorter, and then you're having to revise and add, and hard. But that's because I'm doing revisions. I say they're hard. If I was writing a first draft, I'd tell you the first draft's really hard for me.
Yeah.
So it's just whatever.
I don't know why it all has to be so hard.
It all has to be hard. Like the first book, your first romance, did you have a hard time pulling the trigger? Like just saying, okay, it's ready?
I think for that one, I was working on it for so long.
Okay.
I had started it while I was still agented. I didn't ever send it to my agent, but it was something that the first one I think I worked on for quite some time, and I had the idea for a long time. I actually had the idea for many years, because I thought, what would happen if there was a romance between someone from a public school and someone from a charter school? That would be like forbidden romance. Of course, I thought I thought it was like Romeo and Juliet originally. And then I took it down to like enemies to lovers. And then I took it down even more to they're pretty much the same. They're not really enemies. But so I had that idea for a very long time for the romance. And like I said, I had been reading romance for so long that even though I kept saying, oh, I'm a middle grade author, maybe I'll do YA one day, maybe I'll do picture books one day, I didn't think too much that I would be doing romance. But when I looked down and realized, like, oh, I've read 100 romance novels since the last time I read a middle grade. Okay, it's time to actually do this.
Yeah, makes sense.
Well, you said something earlier that I think is so smart, and I really applaud you for doing it, is that you said you thought, oh, it'd be fun to write books I can cuss in, but then you went back and took a lot of the cussing out because your steam level is lower. And I just think that's so wise. A lot of people won't do that. A lot of people will not, they'll either hang on to their cuss words, I'm raising my hand, or they'll hang on to something else. They won't let it go when it would serve them and the book and the readers better if they did make that change.
I listened to the podcast you did with Stephanie Ferris, and the things y'all talked about with her was the cuss words. And I think that day I went back to my book and I did a Control F for all the F words, and then I just deleted them and I made something else in their place.
There you go.
I made the decision to like, let's get this as far from my legal name as possible, just in case. We'll keep everything separate. But I also still have a day job, like working with the public. So I think it's also makes sense to have pen names.
Yeah.
I also thought with having the middle grade and the adult, maybe not all in Goodreads together, that was also what I was
I
thinking.
think that was a smart move.
And I didn't know how separate I would want them. And so I thought I'll just keep it separate as possible to start. And if I want to merge it and be more open about it, depending on where life takes me, and you can't go the other direction.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. If you start out that way, then you can merge it or reveal the pen name later and say, hey, I'm also writing this. But if you don't do that, then you can't really turn back the clock.
There is an author in the YA space who now is like a household name for a YA author, but originally their first book was like a $15,000 deal. They didn't think it was going to be a big deal. They used their own name, and now they have all these privacy issues because they couldn't anticipate that they would become a huge success. So it's like, you don't want to count the chickens before they hatch, but you do have to set yourself up to be very successul.
Yeah, you might as well set yourself up to be successful, right? Just in case it happens.
You might as well be ready for it.
Yeah.
I would love it if it was necessary.
It'd be a really good problem to have.
Is there anything else you wish you'd known about self-publishing that you think might benefit new authors to hear?
I certainly wish I had started, like, it would have been fun to have started sooner, certainly during the gold rush of self-publishing, but that's not useful for anybody. I think you don't need to pick classes or anything like that necessarily. I think the timeline works really well for people who work too fast, feel like they're working too fast for traditional publishing. I know that I have a couple authors that I read that some of these authors are publishing every month or even less than that. It's still very impressive. So I think that people who want to set their own schedule can do it. I know that for me, I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. Even from a young age, like one time when I was in college, there was an event at my college for entrepreneurs, and I was an RA, so I couldn't leave campus. So I went to the event because I knew there was going to be snacks. And all the adults that were at the event, obviously I was an adult, I was in college, but the professionals who were at the event, they would say, oh, and what major are you? And I would tell them, oh, I'm a social work major. And they would just get this blank look in their eye, like, that's not an entrepreneurial gig. And in my mind, I was thinking, exactly. I do not want to be an entrepreneur. I have no desire to do it. And so I think that's also part of what I liked about traditional publishing was you have a team, and it's not this, you're still an entrepreneur, but it is like being a cog in the machine, not in the same way. And I'm not, I don't mean that in a bad way, but you are part of a team, and you do have feedback from people, and you are told what to do it to some extent. It's still, again, you're still an entrepreneur, but you're really an entrepreneur in self-publishing. So I think that was a big thing that held me back from doing it, was being afraid of being an entrepreneur. I don't think of myself as someone with an entrepreneurial spirit or a desire to start my own business. But I just think about it as like someone who is a dentist and they just got in it to clean teeth, but then they opened their own office.
And then there you are, an accidental entrepreneur. What you going to do except learn how to do sales tax.
Entrepreneur thing. But I think if people want to be an entrepreneur, if that's something they want, then they definitely need to start doing self-publishing, and they need to go into it. I think people get worried about timelines and being very, oh, I'm not ready. And I think that's something that has really served me from the beginning, is just going for it and not being too afraid to do something that I haven't done before, something that I am not an expert in, and just trying, because then I can actually get stuff done by doing it. And so I think I think that if you're just sitting on it and trying to tinker with it and make sure it's perfect, you can certainly continue doing that. But I also think that no one, especially in self-publishing, no one's going to be able to tell you that you're ready. You're the one who has to do it.
That's right.
Yeah. And there's always going to be more to learn, more that you're not completely 100% sure about. So sometimes there's a value in moving forward, even if you don't feel quite ready.
This has been so great. And I just appreciate you coming on and sharing with us, and tell people where they can find out more about you and your books and all that.
Yeah. So my books are the Teachers After Hours series. And so that series is complete in its duology. And then the first book in the reality romance series of novellas is called Unreal Crush, and it blends from the world from the first series, and it has the librarian from that school goes on this reality TV show. So you still get it still follows the teachers a little bit. You still get a cameo from them in that book. And you can email me at FionaMarinAuthor@gmail.com. And I have all the social medias.
We'll have all those links in the show notes, and they will be at wishidknownforwriters.com. And if you want to support the podcast, you can go to that same link /support. Thanks for listening today. And don't forget to check out our sponsor, Ingram Spark. Go to ingramspark.com /learn more. And we will see everybody next week.
Bye.
Bye.